Retirement. That's what we're all aiming at, right? But exactly what does that mean? It conjures up visions of endless days of golf, drinks with little umbrellas in them on a tropical beach, feet up, reading a book. Is that what it's all about? I don't think so. Life would get pretty dull after a while without anything meaningful to do, don't you think? I'm Jackie Doucette, and I'm on a mission to discover exactly what life is like beyond retirement. Join me while I chat with people who've already done it, who've retired to something rather than from something. Let's find out together exactly what's waiting for us when we say goodbye to that 9 to 5. Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of Beyond Retirement. Today my guest is Therese Huston, a cognitive neuroscientist who transforms good science into great strategies. She's the author of at least 4 books, including her most recent one, Sharp, 14 Simple Ways to Improve Your Life Through Brain Science. Therese has taught at Seattle University, advised Fortune 500 companies, and written for Time Magazine, the New York Times, and Harvard Business Review. Therese, thanks for joining me today.
Thanks, Jackie. It's such a treat to be here.
I'm really excited to hear all about the things you do because brain science is something that really fascinates me. Let's start with a little bit of your backstory. How did you end up studying the brain?
Well, I went to graduate school to get my master's and Ph.D. straight out of college. I didn't take a gap year. Looking back, I kind of wish that I had, but I went right into grad school and I was studying cognitive science, how the brain and mind work. And I became fascinated with what neuroscience had to teach us. And I wasn't in a neuroscience program, but I basically enrolled for every neuroscience course that I could take. And I got my PhD advisor with someone who's now in charge of neuroscience at Princeton, or at least he was last I checked. So I was very excited about neuroscience. And I remember in my I think it was my 3rd year of my graduate program, I went excitedly into my advisor's office and I said, I think I figured it out. I know what I want to do my PhD research on. And he was slouched at his computer typing. In fact, he didn't even look away from the computer yet. And he's like, okay. and I said, I want to study neuroscience and how to make it helpful to people. And at this point, Jackie, he finally turns away from his computer and he says, you mean for patients, right? And I said, no, I mean for everyday people like you and me. And this was the early 1990s. And his eyes just slide right back to his computer and he goes back to typing. And he's like, it's too soon. Maybe another decade, but it's way too soon. So that was in the early 90s. And then in the early 2000s, I approached another researcher who I'd worked with. And he became the department chair of the psychology department at Stanford. And I asked him, I want to apply neuroscience to everyday problems. And he said almost the exact same thing. It's too soon. Too soon, Therese. We got to wait a while. So finally, and I waited actually 2 decades, and then during the pandemic, I began to dip into the research and finding out, much to my delight, that neuroscience was really getting useful to everyday people. And I was personally looking for strategies myself because I was finding myself so distracted by the news cycle. I don't know about you, Jackie, but I often I'm able to just ignore the news when I need to focus. I'm good about that. Or if I need to go to bed, I won't watch the evening news or listen to the podcast at night that has to do with the news. But during the pandemic, I found myself just starting every day checking, what is Fauci saying, and what are the rates of COVID in my state and city, and and it was a bad way to start the day because then I was very distracted. So I, for myself, was looking for strategies on how to get focused earlier in the day, and what did neuroscience have to teach us. So when I found those strategies useful for myself, I began to realize, wait, maybe this could be helpful to other people. And what does the research have to say about memory, and what does research have to say about coping with stress, and just so many great things that neuroscience can now teach us about how to live better, happier lives.
That's fascinating. And I do find myself hiding away from the news. I tend to be an ostrich. People say, well, did you hear about it? Well, no, I didn't.
And now I'm hearing about it. Here we go.
Yeah. I think we can find all we need.
Yes, and the top news stories will make it to us. And it's not that I ignore it altogether, but I do find that I have to stop digesting news after dinner. Basically, before dinner, I can handle the news. After dinner, it's going to keep me up at night, and that's not good for anybody.
And that's interesting in itself that you've discovered that about, I guess it's about the way that you think about things and continue to rehash them later on. And you don't get
Yeah.
to calm down or relax or get
Yeah.
your mind off of it.
You've had a couple of guests on the show who talk about doing experiments with oneself, and I'm definitely someone who pays attention to, oh, did that make things better or worse for me? And trying to tease apart what are the factors. And I'm someone who struggles with insomnia, and so teasing apart what do I do before bed? What do I do in the middle of the night when I can't sleep? And what works and what seems to make it worse? And that's tracking everything to how much did I drink before bed? Or, when I did wake up at 3 in the morning, what was I thinking about and how did I handle that? And so I think the more we can pay attention to those factors, it's important to look what the research says as well, because that can guide us like, oh, I didn't realize that might be what's affecting me. So the research is incredibly helpful that way, especially when it comes to the brain, because we can do something that could help our brain and not experience the benefit immediately, right? Because there can be cumulative effects. And a lot of the research out there finds that, if you do something for several weeks, you get an effect. But if you just do it once, you won't see an effect. And so it's also helpful to know what the research has to say, because you might try something one day and say, oh, I didn't see a difference, when actually it started to make a difference, but it's not enough for you to notice yet. You need the cumulative effect for you to really actually see it. But the beauty is, when you develop those long-term patterns, the effects last longer as well. So you can skip a day or even skip a couple of days, and the benefits usually will continue.
Oh, that's good to know, because it sure doesn't work that way with exercise, does it? You
No.
skip a couple of days and suddenly you're starting again.
Yeah. Exercise is tough that way, especially if you travel, right? And then exercise, squeezing it into days when you had a red eye or you're just jet lagged, all of those things can make it hard.
Something you said caught my attention. You talked about, if I wake up at 3 in the morning, what was I thinking
Yes.
about? One of the problems that I have with the things people have said to me about how to have good sleep hygiene is you take things away from the bedroom. You don't have things in
Yes.
there that are going to bother you and that sort of
Mhm.
thing. And one of my doctors one time said, stop looking at the clock when you wake up. Just close your eyes and go back to sleep. You don't need to know what time it is. If it's time to get up,
Mm.
your alarm will wake you. But how
Mm.
do you remember your dream? Like someone else will say, oh, if you wake up in the night and you've had a dream, get your journal out and write it down. Well, then I'm awake. That's the
Then,
end of
yeah,
the
that's
that's the end
right.
of the sleep.
Yeah, and the advice on this can be really contradictory, right? Because so one piece of advice you'll hear frequently is, don't look at your phone right before bed and don't look at it in the middle of the night. And then there are all these wonderful apps that are to help you fall asleep, which are either on your phone or on some device, right? And I find some of those apps extremely helpful. So, what I've tried to do is then find out, okay, is there something in between? So, for instance, one of the reasons your phone is so detrimental to sleep is that it has a lot of blue light, and blue light activates the pineal gland, which makes it feel like daylight. So, even though your phone doesn't emit as much light as daylight, the amount of blue light it has signals to your brain that it's time to wake up. And so, one of the small things that I've done that's really improved my sleep, you can look online for how do I turn on a red light filter on my phone. And so this is something I do now every night, about an hour before bed. I turn on a red light filter on my phone so that it's not as blue. Everything will have kind of a reddish tone to it. And I leave that on all night so that if I do wake up in the middle of the night and want to use one of these sleep apps, when I bring it up on my phone, the whole thing looks kind of reddish, but that's okay. As long as I know what I'm looking for, I don't, need to be able to see any blue colors. And it really helps with my sleep. I can get to sleep a lot faster. So I think, but it can be tricky to find like that piece of advice that falls in between the two extremes, right? That don't have your phone around at all. Oh, but use a sleep app. So it's
Put it in the
tricky
other
to.
room and turn it up loud.
You're right. And if you have a partner in the room, then that doesn't work either, right?
So is the red light app, is that different than, say, turning your screen to the dark mode instead of light mode? Does that make a difference?
Yeah, so it's not an app. It's basically going in there. So there is a dark mode, but it doesn't filter out blue light on most phones, at least
Okay.
not on my iPhone. So there's actually something that you can set on your iPhone. I've got it set. You can just do a search on Google, um, or whatever search browser you like to use. How do I put on a red light filter on my phone? And what I have it done, the way I've done it is basically I press one button on my phone 3 times, and I've set it so that when I press that button 3 times, it turns on the red light filter. So I don't have to go through and search for it every time. I've just basically
Right.
tied it to a button. And what's beautiful about that is, in addition to the dark mode, which is basically lowering the amount of light, it's also filtering out the blue light. So it is
Okay.
slightly different than dark mode. Yeah.
Okay. So
But it's
I've
worth
got
looking
to,
into. It's a
yeah, I
a
think I
great
will.
little trick to know about. And it has to do with brain science, or we know that that you're basically messing with your circadian rhythms if you see blue light at 3 in the morning. You're basically telling your body that you've seen the sunrise. that's that's not what we want if we want to get back to sleep.
And of course, your body believes what you tell it.
Sure. Yeah. These circadian rhythms are powerful. And, we're recording this in winter. And, most of us are finding that the days are shorter than they used to be. And that can be both a benefit in terms of, getting potentially more rest, but it can also mean that we find ourselves awake when it's dark, and if we want to go for a walk when it's light out, we're having to wait until after 7 a.m. to do that. And that can be, it can really mess with your opportunities to get exercise, which is also really good for your brain.
So I've got a couple of questions to ask about a variety of different things, and I
Mhm.
don't know if they're going to be in the book that you wrote because there are
Sure.
14 ways to improve your life. So maybe we can talk about your book a little bit and see if you hit on any of the things I want to ask.
Sure. So,
Uh,
yeah, what would you like to know about my book? I can tell you a bit about it, but if there are specific things you're curious about, I'm happy to be responsive.
let's just start with what the book is about, and then
Hmm.
we'll go into specific ways, maybe, or maybe you can
Hmm.
tell us about one or two of them.
That would be great. So the book, I've called it 14 Simple Ways to Improve Your Life with Brain Science, but really my editors and I have agreed it's really 52 ways. uh, but we stuck with 14 because there's 14 different chapters. So there are, for instance, 2 chapters on how to deal with stress, how to deal with chronic stress, stress that's, lasts several weeks versus how to deal with acute stress. You're going to your in-laws today, and going to your in-laws tends to be triggering. So, how can you prepare for that event so it's less stressful for you and you can cope better in the moment? And so there are a couple of chapters on stress. There's a chapter on decision making. I have a previous book on the decision making, so I was very excited to dive into the neuroscience of decision making. There's a chapter on focus, how to get more focused and be less distracted. There's a chapter on improving your memory. There's even a chapter on how to make fewer mistakes. What are some strategies for making fewer mistakes in life? It's what I did is I looked at basically where are the areas where neuroscience can give us some really practical advice, and tried to dive into those. Then there are other topics where I know there's some great neuroscience, but so many other people have done such great writing on them that I decided to leave them out. For instance, I could have included a chapter on sleep because sleep is so essential, especially as we age. And it's something that our bodies seem to struggle with much more so than they did when we were younger. But I chose, for instance, to leave out sleep simply because so many people have written about it, and I was finding I couldn't add something new. So I was really trying with the book to offer places where you might not have heard this anywhere else, and I want you to know, I want you to hear it from me, or to at least hear it at all, and to provide insights into some of the surprising findings that are out there that people might not know about. I think everybody knows I should eat healthier. Oh. Right? But are there specific things that you could be consuming that could make a difference? Not just, lowering your fat and cholesterol. So I tried to dive into what some of those specific things might be.
And what is there? What should I be eating that I'm not eating that's going to
Yes.
help my
Well,
brain?
yeah. So one that I found surprising in terms of the strength of the benefits, it's not so much something to eat, but something to drink. And that is your brain has a favorite beverage. Probably it's water, but besides staying hydrated, the key beverage that your brain likes best is tea. which I found fascinating, especially I'm in Seattle where there are a lot of coffee drinkers. Tea has huge benefits to your brain, especially green tea. Um, the general thing that tea does for your brain, any kind of tea, black tea, oolong, basically any of the caffeinated teas, is it will improve your focus. So if it's a day when you know you really want to be less distracted than usual and really be focused and in your best zone, drink tea that morning over coffee, because the combination of caffeine and an amino acid called L-theanine will really improve your focus and make it easier to shut out distractions. It's also L-theanine improves multitasking. None of us are very good at multitasking, but tea will improve your ability to do it well. And green tea is especially important as we age. One team of researchers estimate that for every green tea you drink on a daily basis, you lower your risk of dementia by about 5%. So, yeah, that's great to be able to put a number on it. So, and they find that 1 cup great, 2 cup great, but 3 cups really begins to make a difference in terms of something called white matter lesions in your brain. Really reduces that, which contributes to dementia as well. So that's now my goal, is to drink 3 cups of green tea each day. And I've really had to experiment, because when I first read this, I don't like it. And I found if I add some sweetener and if I get a fruity green tea, and I don't like matcha, so experiment. This isn't, in fact, get online if you like to shop online. Now's a good time to find great sales and look for green tea variety pack. And that way you can try several different green teas, and chances are you'll find one that you like. So drinking green tea, big benefits. And for some reason, we don't hear that much about it.
Interesting.
Do you like, are
I
you a
do
tea
not
drinker?
like tea. I don't drink no coffee either. So I was
Oh, there
really
you go.
hoping you were going to tell me white wine would be the thing.
No, I wish, but no, sadly not.
You talked about reducing dementia a little bit. So that kind of goes into one of my questions, was about
Mm,
um, knowing whether or not the symptoms you're seeing, or the supposed symptoms you're seeing, are
mm,
really a problem, or whether it's just aging as we get a little bit older. My mom was
mm,
always saying, "Oh, well, your uncle is showing kind of some signs of dementia. He's losing his memory. He's not very good at it." It's, "Mom, he's 95. He can have some memory loss." So how do you tell the difference between the regular signs of memory loss, or are there regular
mm,
signs of
mm,
memory loss? Is there some memory loss that's normal, or is it all kind of degenerating
mm.
abnormally?
So I find it's really helpful to give people two lists of three things that are normal with aging, that are changes that might be concerning but are actually just normal part of aging and not a sign of concern. And then three that if these happen to you, you should have a talk with your doctor so that they can do more extensive cognitive tests. So let's talk about the three that are totally normal, even though they might be alarming the first time they happen to you. So the first one is what's called the tip of the tongue phenomenon, and that would be you're trying to come up with a word or someone's name, and it just isn't coming to you. You see someone on the bus, and it's your doctor's receptionist, and you've seen her so many times. Oh, but you're seeing her on the bus, or you're seeing her in the grocery store, and it's not coming to you. Whereas later that day, all of a sudden it'll come right back to you. And you're like, oh, it's Elizabeth. How could I have forgotten? Right. So someone out of context, or a word that's not coming to you. And it's most often nouns. In fact, I heard a great surgeon in an interview recently saying that she was in surgery. She's in her mid-50s. And she said she turned to the nurse next to her in the middle of surgery and said, "Hand me the thingy to grasp." For the grasping thingy, right? And she's doing this motion with her hands, and it comes to her like a minute later. Well, forceps, of course, right? But it was a cute moment where this is obviously a word that's very familiar to her, and just she blanked in the moment. So tip of the tongue phenomenon, very normal. Another one that's very normal. This doesn't have a great name, but cognitive scientists call it mild forgetfulness. And where I think most of us experience mild forgetfulness, is we walk into a context and we can't remember why we're in that context. So you walk into the garage, you're like, wait, why am I in the garage? Or you open up the refrigerator and you're like, wait, what did I need out of the refrigerator? You have to back up and look on the counter. Oh, right, I need this, right? And so it'll come to you when you recreate the situation right before you went into that, right? If you go into the garage, as soon as you go back in the house, you realize, oh, right, I went out there to get this particular kind of screwdriver, but you'll you're thinking about something else as you enter the garage and you forget. So that's mild forgetfulness, completely normal as long as it comes back to you later. And the third one is that multitasking becomes harder. We become much more easily distracted as we get older, and we've known that for decades now. But as a result, it can be harder to multitask than it used to be. So my great example of this, I'm 56 right now, and I love to entertain and have people over for dinner. And what is a typical thing is people arrive and I'm still cooking and I ask people, oh, can you chop some of the carrots? Oh, would you mind stirring this while I prep this? And I'm going back and forth between chatting with them and catching up and looking at the recipe and back and forth, back and forth. Well, now when I have people over for dinner and they want to chat while we're preparing dinner together, I'll be like, hold on, let me look at the recipe. Hold on. Right. I find it much harder to go back and forth between, I'll say, can you hold on to that story? I really want to hear it, but I need to see what the next step is. Right. And so it's kind of humorous because I'm always trying new recipes. That part's not new, but like I find it harder to listen to them and look at the recipe at the same time. So
Right.
that multitasking has gone down for me. So that's all those three things: tip of the tongue phenomenon, mild forgetfulness, where you for kind of the context, you can't remember why you're there, and then you can reconstruct it pretty quickly, or multitasking is harder. All three normal. The three that would really be reason to have conversation with your doctor, one would be you go to a familiar place and you feel lost. So you go to the mall, your favorite mall, you're going to your favorite store, and you walk in the mall and then you can't remember which direction to turn in to go to your favorite store, right? So a place that's familiar and you feel lost in it. A second one that would be really concerning would be you start substituting words. And I don't mean that you go to say, this is my mug, and instead I say my glass, but I go to say, this is my mug, and instead I say, this is my beaker, right? It's definitely not a beaker, right? Where you really unusual word substitution. And particularly if you didn't substitute words when you were younger. If you've been doing this since you were 12, we're not concerned about it. But if you have strange word substitutions that start happening, then that would be concerning. And then the third one would be you're doing something very routine and you can't remember the next step. So you've had the same coffee machine for 7 years now, and you go to make coffee in the morning and you're looking at the different things and you can't remember what to do next with the coffee machine. That would be really concerning. So familiar routines, you can't remember how to perform those routines. Familiar places, you get lost, or you do word substitutions, or a word just never comes to you. You can't think of it now, and you can't think of it later. It feels like that word is gone. So those would be three that would be very concerning.
So should people be alarmed if it happens to them once?
Yeah, I've heard different people have different perspectives on this. So I know some people that once they happen once, they're like, you know what, I'm going to talk with my doctor, and then they feel more comfortable because they can do more complete testing. Other people take the approach that this is like your check engine light coming on your car, and if it only blinks on once and then goes off, then all right, we're going to keep an eye out for that light, but that's okay, it went off. Whereas obviously if it keeps coming on, you need to take it to a service center to figure out what the problem is. So up to you as to your comfort level, but the research is clear that catching things early, even as scary as it might be, catching things early, you can do much more if there is a problem, you can do much more to slow it down and even halt the progression. There's, in fact, a book called The End of Alzheimer's. He's out of the United States. Dale, I'm forgetting his name. I'll send it to you afterwards. But there's a growing science to indicate that many of us know cancer survivors, but few of us can say we know many Alzheimer's survivors, right? But we're getting to a point now where at least some scientists are finding that if you catch Alzheimer's early enough, you can stop it and even reverse it to the point where people can go back. But it has to be caught very early on. You can't let it progress to later stages.
Interesting. So can you talk about what kinds of things you can do that might help support
Sure.
or keep you from getting into that position?
Yes, definitely. So first of all, I'll give you some quick statistics. I'm becoming, even though I didn't write this book specifically for people who are thinking about dementia or Alzheimer's, because this is becoming a personal mission of mine. Because as the old statistics used to be that in the United States, 1 out of every 9 people after the age of 65 would develop Alzheimer's. And as of January of 2025, a study came out showing that those numbers were really underestimating the numbers, that it's now estimated, at least in the United States, I don't know in Canada, but in the United States, 42% of Americans will develop Alzheimer's after the age of 55 at some point in their lifetime. So 4 out of 10, so much higher than we thought. And that's dementia broadly. Alzheimer's is more specific. So I am on a mission to educate people on, well, what can you do? Because this is concerning, and we can you are not destined to have this. This is something that lifestyle changes, and even if you have a genetic risk, lifestyle changes can really reduce your chances of getting Alzheimer's and dementia. So a couple of things. Green tea is a great one. In terms of, let's talk daily and weekly. So on a daily basis, something that you can do is meditation. So fabulous research. Many labs have shown that mindfulness meditation actually can grow new neurons, especially in your hippocampus. The hippocampus is a brain structure deep inside of your brain that is responsible for memory. And after age 40, we lose about 5% of our hippocampus every decade after age 40. So at age 50, you might not notice. Age 60, you're probably beginning to notice. And that's just normal brain loss of that area. The good news is you can put neurons back in that area if you just know how. And one of those strategies for putting neurons back in that area is mindfulness meditation. And a single mindfulness meditation won't do it, but a regular practice of about 10 minutes a day, and that maybe 5 days a week, and you get hippocampal volume, meaning you're growing new neurons, will increase after just a couple of months. I think as short as 6 weeks is the research I've seen. So that's incredible, right? That you can reverse the loss of neurons. So, and you can start this at 60, you can start it at 70, you can start it at 80 and begin to put neurons back. And mindfulness meditation, my favorite app right now is a free one called Healthy Minds. It's out of the University of Wisconsin, and I love that it's free, and I love that they have active meditations. It's developed by a neuroscientist, Richie Davidson, and he and his team have developed, if you're someone who's like my husband who can't picture sitting still and meditating for 10 minutes because he's very active, they have walking meditations, they have active meditations. And because it's developed by a neuroscientist, you can trust that they've rigorously tested this and its benefits. So Healthy Minds, and it's my favorite go-to. So that would be daily mindfulness meditation, 10 minutes. And then weekly, dance classes, right? So in terms of things that people, I know, right? When I ask people, I just did a town hall and I was asking the audience, what's one thing that neuroscientists around the world have found will help you grow new neurons in your hippocampus and improve your memory? And, people are guessing crossword puzzles and learning a new language. And these things, none of these things are hurt. They in fact, they can help. Learning is really important. But one that's been tested and proven again and again is to take a dance class, and it will increase hippocampal volume. It'll put neurons back in your hippocampus. And it's important. The class part is important, right? So you're not just dancing in your kitchen when nobody's watching. I know, right? That would be lovely. It doesn't hurt because that's exercise. But what's happening with a dance class is you've got 3 things. You've got the movement, so you've got exercise, so that increases blood flow, and there's a bunch of different benefits to exercise to your brain. There's the memory component because you're learning, right? You're having to memorize steps. And there's a social component in that, you're bumping into people or you have a dance partner. There's a social component, and that trifecta seems to be really important. And you can't, again, a single dance class won't do it, but they find that 6 months of dance class have significant improvements in terms of growing new neurons. So that's one that I don't think people know about. So when people now ask me, what are you going to do? I'm starting to talk about retirement. And when people ask me, what do I want to do in retirement? My first answer is always, I got to find a dance class. I'm going to take a dance lesson. Yes. Isn't that fun?
I'm going to let some friends know that they're doing the right thing because I've got some friends in pickleball who are taking dance lessons.
Yes, and even Zumba, right? Like there, you can find the flavor of this that might work for you.
Interesting. I have no rhythm. Dancing is hard.
I agree. Dancing is hard, right? And it can be embarrassing, but
Very
that social,
embarrassing.
very embarrassing, but that social component, can be uh, can be refreshing. Hopefully you would be able to laugh at yourself, right? If you're
I
if you're
have
clumsier than you
to.
want to
There's
be. Yes.
nothing else you can do.
Which is the mindfulness approach? Does the mindfulness meditation, does that have any appeal to you?
It does. It does. I'm especially intrigued by the active
Mm.
meditation
Hmm.
because I do have trouble just sitting right now. 10 minutes I can do, but for
Yeah.
any more than that, I tend to fall asleep actually. So it's a
Yeah.
little too meditative, perhaps.
Sure, right, right. Or yeah, you just might need more sleep. The looking into healthy minds in there, and what you can do is when you're they have a variety of meditations, but they have a program that you basically can do over many sessions, and each time it tells you what the next lesson is, and is it a lesson or is it a meditation? And when it comes up, when there's a meditation to do, it'll give you the option. Do you want 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 30? Like you have, first of all, you get to dial in. It's not set that it's 7 minutes. Instead, you pick how long you've got. So if you're going for a long walk, you could do 30 minutes. And then you tell it, is it a sitting meditation or an active meditation? And then the audio guides you accordingly based on whether you're sitting or whether you're moving. So I love it because I'm finding I'm meditating twice as often now because, for instance, today when we get done, I will have 20 minutes before my next meeting. I will do a 10-minute active meditation in my neighborhood, right? Even if it's raining, I just pop in my AirPods and go for a walk, and it will refresh me for my next meeting. But I also know I'm doing a big brain benefit too.
Guess you kind of have to be careful where you're walking if you're spending your walk thinking about something else. You don't want to
Mm-hmm.
be walking out into traffic.
Yes, yes, yes. Be safe. I mean, it's not going to ask you to close your eyes or anything. And in fact, what's beautiful about it is with a lot of the meditations on the Healthy Minds app, it will ask you to tune into your environment. So it will ask you to like, okay, I want you to tune into the specific smells around you. Okay, now I want you to tune into things that you can hear. So it will often ground you in the environment that you're in. Not all of them, but some of them do. Others, for instance, I'm doing one right now that's about compassion, and the lesson plan, the part of the sequence that I'm on is right now is about compassion. So I'm thinking about people that it's easy for me to be kind to versus people that it's harder for me to be kind to, and how can I have a feeling of compassion for all of them, not just the people that I like to take care of.
Interesting. I haven't, I've experienced a few different types of meditation, but nothing like what you've described there, where you're thinking about, how to change. It's all just relax and think about your body and keep the thoughts away or acknowledge them when they come. And, you're not thinking about something. So this
Mm-hmm.
will be interesting. I'll have to give it a shot.
Yeah, it's really interesting, and what's really nice is that with the course that they have, it alternates between here's a lesson, and the lessons are 5 to 8 minutes long versus here's a meditation. Again, you get to pick how long the meditation is, and the lessons they do very much like we're having the conversation now, where they say, oh, there's research by this researcher, let's hear from them, and that researcher talks for a few minutes about here's an important finding, and so it's really nice because you get to learn about some of the science and why the meditation I'm about to do could be helpful. So it doesn't just feel like it's woo woo out there. Why am I why am I doing this? Instead, it's grounded in like I just learned that it has this benefit. Okay, now I'm more motivated. Or if you were skeptical, you come in with a little less skepticism about the activity you're about to do. So I'm really
Right.
impressed with the work they've done. Yeah,
You said healthy mind.
healthy minds. Hmm.
Healthy minds.
Yep. And it's free. They accept donations, I'm sure, but it's great. I also have a Calm subscription. I have a bunch of paid meditation apps that I also use, but this is my go-to in terms of really investing in my own well-being.
I have tried some of the nighttime stories on Calm before.
Ah, what do you think?
Some of them are good. Some of them I can't listen to the person.
Exactly. For me, it's usually about the voice,
Yeah.
right? And it's
So
really
I don't want to
interesting.
hear that.
I don't want to hear that's not going to put me to sleep. It's grating or they're talking too fast, right? And so
Yep.
this is where, yep, the red filter has been helpful because if I start a story, they're like, nope. The story sounded appealing and it's not. I can go back in the app and I'm not spending too long looking at a blue screen. But I'm with you. I like the calm stories and I often listen to one well past its enjoyment point, but it's simply a voice that I'm finding soothing.
Yep. And usually, if I turn on an audiobook and I'm listening to that, I'll end up falling asleep. And then the audiobook keeps going, of course. So in the morning, you've got to go back and figure out
Oh,
where you were. But if I put
yes.
on these sleep things, I end up listening to the whole thing. And it's so frustrating. And I
Oh,
don't know why that happens.
because you enjoy it so much, perhaps. Is that it?
Possibly, but I enjoy the
Mm.
books that I'm listening to too. I just can't stay
Mm.
awake.
Yeah, somebody needs to solve that problem where there's some feedback that once I fall asleep, the book stops reading. That would be great.
So we're going to be doing lots of things, I think, to help with our
Mhm.
improving the number of neurons in our brain. We're going to be drinking green tea and we're going to be dancing more.
And mindfulness meditation is a good one. Yep.
Yeah,
And another really important one has to do with stress reduction. So, we might think of stress as something that's unpleasant in the moment and it interferes with sleep or it makes us irritable. But one of the things that's research is clear on is if you have, a little bit of cortisol is great. It gets you off the couch. It gets you going. Cortisol gets you moving. But
right.
elevated levels of cortisol over a long period of time are really bad for you. And that's another thing that will shrink your hippocampus. So elevate, if you have high stress levels, something is not resolving and not resolving and not resolving. That's going to be bad for your brain. So finding ways to reduce your stress levels, and maybe the meditation will do that. But I would love to, if I can show you two quick techniques for reducing stress.
Sure.
Yeah. Okay. Great. So one's soothing self touch. So what you want to do is just take your hands and put them on your chest
Okay.
and just do little, very small circles and pay attention to how your hands feel there. If you have something thick on, you might not feel the warmth of your hands, but if you can feel that warmth coming through and just
This,
can you?
sorry, I've got to break into that for a second. First, you've got to assume that there is any warmth at all in your hands, and mine are like ice.
Oh no, it's too cold. Okay, so then maybe warm your hands first. um, but pay attention to how that soothing sensation. I could think about I'm soothing myself. This feels really good. This touch feels good. Uh, Research finds that 20 seconds of that self touch, soothing self touch, will reduce cortisol levels. And it can be touch from someone else too. If you have a partner that you're comfortable hugging, for instance, for 20 seconds, not everybody has that. Or they might have a great partner, but not someone who wants to hug for 20 seconds. So that's why it's really nice that the science shows that 20 seconds of doing this for yourself. Or if this doesn't feel effective, maybe it's a hug, where you squeeze the tops of your shoulders. In the lab, they also have people put their hands on their face and just close their eyes. But whatever might feel soothing to you. That soothing self-touch will reduce cortisol
Okay.
levels. So that's a really nice one. I've even done this in the line at the grocery store when I have to get someplace quickly and the line is taking too long. I do this. I set down my little hand basket. I do this for 20 seconds and I feel much calmer. I can't make the line go any faster, but this will help. So soothing self-touch is one to know about for reducing stress levels in the immediate sense. And the other one to know about is a breathing technique, which I can demonstrate. And what I'd like you to do, Jackie, I'm going to describe it and then we'll do it together. So I'm going to have you exhale all of your air in a second. Yeah, get comfortable. And in a second, I'll walk you through it. I'll have you exhale all of your air and then I'll have you do an inhale for a count of 5, hold for a count of 2, and exhale for a count of 7. And we'll step through it twice and people who are listening or watching can do it along with us.
Okay.
And uh, if the inhale, if you get to 3 and I'm counting out loud and you find that at 3 you can't inhale anymore, just start holding your breath early. That part's not such much of a concern. And if when we do the exhale, you find it hard to exhale that slowly, just breathe like you're breathing on pizza, through pursed lips. Okay. All right. Are you ready to try?
Sure.
Okay, great. So exhale all of your air and inhale 2, 3, 4, 5. Hold 2. Exhale 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Again, inhale 2, 3, 4, 5. Hold 2. Exhale 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. How do you feel?
Actually, my heart started to pound a little bit when I was trying to
Mm.
continue to exhale. I could feel a
Oh,
change
yeah.
in me. So
Yeah.
I'm not sure. I guess it would take a little bit of practice to reduce stress that way because it's going to feel like I'm stressing more, trying to count and
Oh.
keep reducing, keep blowing out.
Yeah, yeah, good to know. Yeah, so if that's stressful, next time maybe try 4-2-6. So if a 7, or basically you want the exhale to be longer than the inhale. So if you find a
Okay.
7-second exhale stressful, go 4-2-6, 3-2-5, right? Just shorten that exhale to the point where it begins to feel relaxing. So that's helpful feedback. Yeah.
Okay. Probably
Yeah.
it's just, I got to do it right. I got to do it right.
Ah, yes, yeah, there's that component too, right? We're recording, just getting it. Yes, yeah, yeah. But what researchers find is that long, slow exhale, when your exhale is longer than your inhale, it sends a signal to your body, to your brain, actually, to relax, and it increases activity in your prefrontal cortex, so you'll make better decisions. It calms the amygdala, so you'll, as long as that long exhale isn't stressful, like it could be, if you get that to a point where it's nice and not stressful, it will send a signal to your brain that like we're not under threat. And it's a really interesting way to kind of bypass and tell your brain to everything's fine, because you wouldn't be breathing slowly if things were
Everything's good.
exactly. Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting because I do that when I'm playing pickleball. If we're
Mm.
in a game and we're doing lots of rallies and everything's going and heart's pumping, when I'm going to serve, I stop and I go, there's a nice big exhale,
Yes.
to calm me down before I serve. And, that's very
Yeah.
true. The exhale helps.
Yeah, exactly. You intuitively you've stumbled on this for yourself, right? It
Yeah.
does. It helps you center. Yep.
Yeah. And then I also tell myself over the net, diagonal, in the court, all the things that have to happen.
I
Otherwise, the
am
ball
so
goes, who knows where.
right. I'm excited to do pickleball. I've taken some lessons. I want to actually join, start showing up regularly to a court and doing it with friends. So good for you. That
Is it
exercise is going to
popular?
help your brain.
Is it popular in Seattle?
Hmm.
That's where you are?
It actually, yeah, it actually got its start in Bainbridge Island, which is an island right off
Yep.
of Seattle, right? So, yeah, so it actually originated here. So it's everywhere. And in fact, I know a lot of tennis players complain that their their courts are being taken over by pickleball players. Maybe, I don't know, is that true where you are as well? Yeah,
Yes, it's really
yeah,
hard to find a place to play because they're all taken up.
yes, exactly.
So, along with the stress and the
Mm,
multitasking and all that kind of thing, we tend to feel that we're doing more things and we're doing them better if we're multitasking. And that's
mm,
something that I've had discussions with people about whether multitasking is actually beneficial or not. And
mm,
my view is kind of that it isn't. If you're multitasking, you're not putting your focus on anything enough to do it properly.
mm. Well
And I'm just
said.
wondering whether that has any basis or whether I'm just using that as an excuse not to multitask myself.
Well, it's scientifically backed as an excuse, I'll tell you that.
Oh, good.
So, what researchers have found is, usually when you're multitasking, there's one task that's more important than the other. So maybe you're writing an email at the same time that you're talking to someone, right? You're going back and forth. You've got your grandkids in the kitchen chatting with you while you try to text or finish an email. And what researchers find is your brain, the activity in your brain associated with the main task, whatever one is more important, goes down by 37% on average.
Wow.
So you have a lot less resources for that task that's the most important task, and mistakes go up on average 47%. So you make a lot more mistakes You're going to make more mistakes in that email. And if it's an important email or important text, maybe you're planning something with someone, you're going to type in the wrong, you got to go spend more time on it because you're like made typos and you might be blaming it on the phone, but it's probably the fact that you're multitasking.
Right.
They call it media multitasking is especially bad. So that's one reason that it's bad. Another reason that it's bad is researchers find if you multitask a lot, you'll find it harder to focus later. So I know this is especially true for people who are still working, but I know people who will say, just this morning I was really scattered, but this afternoon I'm going to give myself time to focus, and so maybe in retirement, that's like, I'm going to give myself time to really work on this project or this volunteer opportunity or whatever it might be, or this, maybe you're writing a book and you're going to really focus in the afternoon. The fact that you multitasked a lot in the morning, that was just what you needed to do. But the researchers find that if you multitask in the morning, it's going to be harder to focus later. You'll be more distractible. So even when you want to focus, you give yourself the luxury and the time to focus. If you've multitasked a lot, it will be harder to do. So that's another reason not to do it. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you rob yourself of focus later.
And does it affect your memory anyway? Like if you're multitasking all the time and trying to do a whole bunch of things, when I do it, I tend to forget steps along the way. Not really affecting my memory. That's just affecting the short-term actions. But can it affect you later on?
I haven't seen any longitudinal studies showing that it affects memory. What researchers do find is that when people multitask, they find it harder. It's even harder to reconstruct the steps of what you were doing previously, kind of like what you're describing, right? So it diminishes memory. One way that it might do that is multitasking does raise people's blood pressure. It's stressful, right? You may not think of it that way because you feel like I'm getting two things done, but it's making you a little stressed out. And especially for anyone who's got blood pressure concerns, like you don't want to add to the things that raise your risk there. So it's stressful for you, and stress impacts memory. So at least indirectly, it's going to affect memory.
Okay. I'll keep that in mind. More fuel for my argument. Do this thing, get it done.
Yeah, and the thing that I am trying to do with people is actually say to folks, hey, look, I'm really trying to do more single tasking because I realize it's better for me. So I'm going to just let me single task and then I'll give you my full attention. And so I often tell, and it's really nice because we tend to a number of people take great pride in their ability to multitask, whereas I don't think many people take pride in their single tasking. So I'm really trying to change this language around it, that it's good to single task and that this is something I'm going to give myself permission to do. And usually people are like, oh, of course. Yeah. Again. And then when I pivot to them, I'm able to really give them my full attention, and people appreciate that.
And that to me is important. And that's kind of what I'm trying to do in the focusing or living in the moment. It's like I want to be able to focus on the person that I'm with or the thing that I'm doing and not have to be thinking about all the other things because I don't do that well.
No, none of us do. And it just gets harder as we get older.
So as we get older, are there any good sides to aging? Is there anything that gets better as we age? Like
the brain does better?
Yeah.
Sure. So a couple of things. So one thing that I think a lot of people can relate to, especially if they have teenagers or 20-somethings that they spend any time with, is that we are less emotionally reactive as we get older. So the brain area that's responsible for feeling threatened is called the amygdala, or one of the brain regions responsible for feeling threatened. What they find is that as people get older, upsetting stimuli don't trigger a strong amygdala response. Basically, you feel less reactive to bad news, right? So that doesn't mean you're not upset by the news when you hear it, but basically, whereas you might know a teenager in your life or a 20-something that for whom feels like everything is such a big deal, whereas you're like, well, really, is it that big of a deal, right? And part of that's with experience, but also simply your brain isn't reacting. The emotional parts of your brain are not being thrown into alarm states the way they were when you're younger. So this is great news because we can take things in with more stride, right? So that's great. Our brains are much less emotionally reactive. The other thing that really improves with age is something called crystallized intelligence. So there's fluid intelligence, and that's the ability to think quickly and take in new information, and that peaks in your 30s. Whereas crystallized intelligence peaks for most people in their late 60s, some point in their 70s. And crystallized intelligence is your vocabulary, your pattern recognition, basically crystallized, meaning accumulated intelligence over time. I think one of the reasons people enjoy crossword puzzles more later in life isn't simply because they have more time, but because they've accumulated a lot of knowledge, and it's enjoyable to discover, like, oh, I actually do know that. I heard that on Jeopardy at some point. And so anyway, crystallized intelligence, so we get better at pattern recognition, and we get better at seeing, okay, this matters and this doesn't, right? And so that's one of the things the brain does better as we get older, as opposed to everything matters all the time, which is a young person's dilemma.
Yeah, that's interesting. And I have noticed the change in my response to things. The emotional response isn't quite the same anymore. I've noticed
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, right, isn't it? And it's very interesting because I remember that as a young person. I remember uh, my grandparents' generation just seeming to shrug off things that to me seemed so upsetting. And now as I get older, like, oh, I'm in that place of like, yeah, that's okay. I mean, it's not good, but we can all be okay with that, right? We can find a way to accept that. So it's just really, I think, a delightful part of getting older is that wisdom, but also simply our brains are not reactive the way they used to be. So it's part of the aging process that we can all enjoy.
I find thinking about or learning about all the things that the brain does absolutely fascinating. It's part of the reason I went into pharmacy when I did, because I was interested in what the drugs do to the brain and how different things happen.
Mm,
But I could talk with you about it for hours and hours, but I'm sure that you have things to do. Um,
as do you. Yeah.
before we finish things off, is there anything you'd like to talk about? Anything going on in your life that people might be interested in?
I am so excited. Thank you for asking. I have got a kid's book, a kid's version of Sharp. So the adult book looks like this, and the kid's book looks like this. It's called Best Brain Ever, and it comes out December 2nd, and it's for middle schoolers, so 11 to 13-year-olds. And basically, it's a middle schooler's version of the adult book. And so there are some topics that are the same, like how to get focused, because kids need to focus on their homework and they have many distractions. But then there are some topics that aren't in the adult book, like how to make more friends, because 11 to 13 is a key time for kids to want more friends, to want closer friendships. A big transition happens as you move into middle school. And so this is my first kids book. It was really fun to work with a children's editor to translate and it's neuroscience based, but it's got a fun brain character that
Yeah,
guides
that's
you through the
cool.
book. Anyway, it was a really delightful project, and it's got cute cartoons in it, and I feel
Nice.
I'm hoping to inspire some new neuroscientists out there.
And it'll be available on Amazon.
Amazon, yep, online, whatever, as well as hopefully you'll be able to find it in bookstores, but definitely online retailers, Amazon, as of December 2nd, so it's coming up soon.
Nice. Is there anything specific or even anything in general that you'd like to say about brain health or staying sharp or anything like that as a final kind of note for people?
I think one thing that's really good to know is your best brain days don't have to be behind you. I think as we age, we tend to assume that we were sharpest in our 20s or our 30s or whatever it might have been. And yet if you take some practices, adding green tea into your life, taking a dance class, finding a mindfulness meditation practice that works for you, making these small behavioral changes can make you sharper today and sharper well into the future.
It's good to know that the best of our life isn't behind us, which is what I'm trying to let everybody know. Thank you very much for being with me today. I found it really interesting, and I'm sure that other people have as well.
Thank you so much, Jackie. It's just you're providing such a wonderful service for so many, so I'm grateful to be here.
Thanks. And that's it for this episode of Beyond Retirement. Thank you so much for hanging out with me. I hope you enjoyed it. Are you ready to start rocking your retirement? head on over to www.beyondretirement.ca/rocking-it and sign up to plan out your own roadmap for retirement. Don't wait till it's too late.